Tonight on Teal Tinted Glasses, we are going to talk about the Barracuda. We're going to talk about some college prospects. We might even talk some Sharks, too. It's me, it's Lacey, it's Mark, it's Teal Tinted Glasses, and it starts now. But, of course, if you want to be part of the show, all you have to do is, talk in the YouTube chat. Hit us up on the social medias, all of the social medias. You know where they are. I'm not going to go into it. As I said, tonight it is me. It is Kevin Lacey. It is Mark. Mark, how are you doing? Good to have you back on the show, because I haven't really talked to you on air, I don't think, since the draft, which is criminal.
Yeah, since the marathon.
Yeah.
That marathon draft we did. I'm good. It's good to be back. How are you guys doing?
I am fantastic. Kevin Lacey, how are you?
I'm exhausted. There's been a lot of hockey going on already, and it's been fun. But life is getting in the way right now, and I'm just like, but I will try to bring the energy for you guys here tonight on Teal Tinted Glasses.
Awesome. All right. So I thought before we got into like the Barracuda and some prospects and everything else, I thought we'd just I'd get your takes, because I don't think either of you have really been on this season at all. So I kind of wanted to get your takes on like kind of just the current state of the big club right now. Just any broad brush thoughts you have. Kevin, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I am definitely on the whole 30 and 52 bandwagon. So the Sharks are well along their way. In fact, have surpassed that so far. So I am like just gleaming like Monty Burns on The Simpsons, just like excellent. And it's not like I go actively cheering the Sharks every time they lose. Like when I watch the games, and I've watched most of them so far, I am still cheering for them to win. I want them to do well. I want them to win. But if we lose, it's okay. I'm looking big picture, everyone. I don't think that the rain clouds are in or anything like that. And one of the things, you know what? I'm going to let Mark talk about his thoughts before I jump into my next point on the Sharks.
Sure. I'll echo some of your sentiment there. Like, I'm actually kind of excited, honestly. Like, I'm
Me too.
I'm following a lot of these younger players that are coming up in the next draft, and I'm just like fantasizing about them being on the Sharks. But no, I mean, look, I again, it's actually similar to last year. Like, I came into this season expecting absolutely nothing. So I'm trying my best just to enjoy watching hockey, and at the same time kind of seeing trends with certain players and following specific, roster changes, the coaching staff, what I see them doing. But I'm just enjoying watching hockey. Look, it sucks when we lose sometimes, and especially when they look as bad as they do in some of the periods that they've played. But, I think there's also a calmness to watching a team when you have no expectations. So I'm just enjoying the hockey aspect of it, and I'm a Sharks fan, so I'm rooting for us to win. But when we lose, I'm not all like bummed about it like the rest of the night like I used to be. So
yeah, okay, perfect. I'm glad I cut to you on that, because like my feeling is, for the Sharks fans who are really down on the team, they're what, 3-8-1 or something along those lines so far. Like, would you rather have them winning now and losing in February, March, and April? Because I wouldn't. Because that's the time when you want to see the prospects start to work their way up from the Barracuda, maybe get a game here or there, trend in the right direction going to next season. I don't want them playing good hockey right now, to be frank. I want them to have the stinky games, I guess you'd say, right now. And then February, March, April, those tendencies that David Quinn was teaching during the preseason about you got to be competitive, you got to play hard. If you don't play hard, you're not going to play, like Kevin LeBanc getting scratched a few games ago. That work ethic will hopefully be fully instilled by the spring, and then you trend in the right direction and actually build next season. The last two seasons, the Sharks had really poor springs, and what did we say at the season end? I don't have a very good feeling about next season.
Yeah.
I want to have a good feeling about next season, but right now it's November 2nd, and it's too early to be thinking about that. So I'm okay with them just, coasting along, picking up those regulation losses, and staying down in the standings.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my take too. It's like I still want to see them. Like I still want to be entertained when I watch them, right? Like I understand, obviously, and I've said this many times on After Dark too. Like yes, getting a good draft pick is good, and everyone wants to get a good draft pick, but that's in the spring. Like we still have to get there. And obviously, and some people will bring up the fact that they could finish dead last. That doesn't guarantee them Bedard. Although I think that there's some really good players that you can pick in the top 5. So I mean, it's not like I don't think getting Bedard is the be all and end all, and I really like Bedard too. But if they, if you have to settle for Fantilli, that's not the end of the world, right? So I still want to be entertained along the way. I think would be the best way to say it. So I still want to enjoy the things like Timo Meier's goal last night. Like you want to enjoy that. You want to enjoy the Erik Karlsson hat trick. If they happen to do all that and still lose, fantastic. But I'm not actively rooting against them. I think this team isn't very good. I think that I'm not worried about where they're going to finish. I think that will sort itself out. They don't need me to actively root against them to make that happen. I'm not cheering for, you know what I mean? I'm not cheering for them to win because I think they're going to win a bunch of games and sneak into the playoffs. I don't think that's reality. So I think you just have to enjoy the little things and try to be entertained. And then, we know what's waiting at the end of the tunnel, hopefully.
You want them to be competitive.
Yeah.
For me, it's when I say 30 and 52, I mean 52 one-goal losses. I want them to be in every single game. The only game that I really got frustrated was that Chicago game when they played one of their best first periods of the season and then stunk it up from there. That one I was actually yelling at my TV about. But other than that, I'm with you guys all the way.
Yeah, especially in that Chicago game where they're after that ceremony for Wilson, you kind of hope they're gonna at least win that game. There were some good vibes in the air that night, and then after that first period, it was just awful hockey.
Yeah. Hey, but you went to a great game in New York though against the Rangers.
Yeah, typically I hate the Garden game. There's 3 games. They almost always do Islanders, Rangers, and Devils in one trip. And I usually like the Islanders and the Devils games because I just feel like there's less hatred when I go to those arenas. But the Sharks aren't even a Rangers rival in any capacity. But there's a bunch of junk corporate dudes usually around me who want to start fights and stuff. And it's I'm just I go to these Rangers games and the Sharks never win at the Garden.
Right.
Almost never. They'll usually win against the Devils, maybe lose in overtime to the Islanders, and then just get stomped by the Rangers. And I'm just sitting there listening to their goal song for the whole game. So it was nice actually to see us win that game in overtime. It was the most pleasant Garden experience I've had as an opposing fan.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's awesome. Anything else on the Sharks before we kind of truck this thing along here?
Erik Karlsson. Tune in to any previous episode and you'll hear me talking about the Sharks need to trade Brent Burns, let Karlsson take over the blue line, everything like that. Now, again, it's early in the season and I hope I don't eat my words, but I've been sticking with this for 4 years now. I'm going to stick with it now. Now that Erik Karlsson can finally show that it's his blue line, look at what he's doing. I've been waiting for years for this, guys. So I hope it continues. Great job, EK65. I'm so happy.
Fun, yeah, definitely a fun game last night. I mean, obviously the one thing, and I in the interest of fairness, I will say, the one concern now is can he stay healthy? Which I think at this point, I think is a fair question to ask after his tenure in San Jose. And I'm hoping the answer is yes. I would like to see the Sharks get some return on investment out of that deal because return on investment is not something they've gotten a whole lot of late.
Yeah, it's also super early for this, but a Norris tracking season would be pretty fun to watch if your team's not doing so well. Something like to follow like that. You know, if your defenseman is putting up the numbers that he is, what does he have? 9 goals in 12 games? As a defenseman, that's insane.
Yeah.
And he's got more than a point per game. He's up there with like big names on the top of the chart. So if he can do that through the whole season, it'll give something for Sharks fans at least to cheer on along the way if we are losing.
Yeah, I just see. I'm so maybe because I'm so cynical when it comes to stuff like that though, because I just think like even if he has like a Norris-worthy season, could he win on a non-playoff team that plays when a lot of the media are already in bed?
I think there's so much media speculation about this now that I don't see that happening anymore. Just period.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's so much information sharing and so much just overall negativity, and the media really puts themselves out there on social media as
they should. Yeah.
They should, but they're also exposing themselves to like, oh, there's but hell, even on this podcast, Erik Karlsson, great start. Yeah, but can he stay healthy?
Well, I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, I just feel like it would be like, obviously I want him to continue playing well. I want him, like, I would really like the Erik Karlsson conversation to change, because I think it's really tired at this point. And I feel like anytime like he does get praised, like, and you're right, Kevin, I mean, I just did it too, so I am just as guilty at that point, but I just feel like, you know, I just want the conversation
they're all
to change.
Valid, like, criticisms, concerns, anything like that. It's just that that's the era we live in now, and we just as a society stop looking for just the pure goodness in a lot of things. Yeah. And so it's like asterisk, and then you get to Victor Hedman again as the Norris Trophy winner, you know, things like that. So
people who play at 7:00 in the evening on the East Coast. I mean, because I don't think like not being a playoff team like shouldn't stop him. Like, Adam Fox won, and the Rangers did not make the playoffs that year. Am I correct?
He was in the run. I thought he won.
He won 2 years ago, right?
Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, last year it was Makar.
Right. Yeah, last year was Makar. Year before.
2 years ago was Fox, and that was the year. I think that was the last year Quinn was their coach.
Right. So there's no playoffs. Yeah.
And that was when they just missed the playoffs. Yeah, they had that whole stuff with the Capitals at the end of the season. So yeah, but they were definitely a more competitive team.
Definitely,
I'd be curious to see if the voters would go for a player. I don't care how good his numbers are. If they'd even go for a player who's on that bad of a team,
right.
I personally would think he's worthy. But then again, the argument of like, let's go for somebody who pushed their team into the playoffs is, I could just see them going with that whole thing, even if he leads defensemen in scoring by like 10,
right?
15 points.
Yeah. You know? I have a hard time just thinking where I feel like this team's gonna end up. I just have a hard time. I don't know. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Are you guys? Well, first off, you mentioned return on investment. I thought we were going to throw it to Mark and talk about Luke Cunnin, but we should not do that right now. I want to ask you guys, though, are you concerned that Tomas Hertl's statistical struggles have continued from the end of last season? I'm not overly concerned, but I'm a little like gritting my teeth on it. Like,
I'm not as concerned in the near-term sense. I'm concerned just when I think about another 8-year deal. That's where I get concerned. I'm like, I don't know. I love Hertl. I don't want him to turn into one of those contracts we talk about where it's like, oh, this is, anchoring the team. It's terrible. It's hurting us. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to think of when he's like 34.
Yeah.
And he's getting $8 million a year. That's where I struggle. Whereas when we signed him, I was very happy for him to stay with us just because I think he's the face of the franchise and he's a great overall player. But I think he'll get his act together this season if that's like specifically what you're alluding to.
It's hard because I just think like the quality of this forward group is so right? Like I think a guy who's struggled like Kevin Labanc. Kevin Labanc's not a trigger guy. He's a passer. But if you don't have enough trigger guys, then a guy like Kevin Labanc is going to struggle mightily. And I just, I think that's the issue in this forward group is you've got Timo and Hertl trying to like work magic together with a rotating cast of guys. Logan Couture, I don't know what's wrong with Logan Couture. That's, I'm definitely concerned that Logan Couture's contract is kind of slipping into that, oh no, what have we done situation.
Well, Logan Couture is with Luke Cunnin, and I don't even remember who's on his left side.
Yeah, they've got him with they've moved Barabanov to his line now, which kind of jump started him for a game, I thought. But yeah, there's definitely like I'm a little bit concerned there too. I just feel like this team has so many guys.
Yeah,
like
a player who I was really high on coming in. I mean, there were two players I was high on coming in. Nico Sturm, working out great. Oscar Lindblom, totally playing like a guy.
Yeah.
And that one's hurting me pretty bad because I've followed Oscar Lindblom's career from when he played in Brynäs in Sweden, and so to see him really not coming through, like I was really bullish on him getting a new chance and an opportunity to get it out of Philly, off the fourth line, and he's basically playing fourth line minutes in a third line role for the Sharks.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating.
Yeah, it's definitely it's going to be a frustrating season. So let's talk let's talk about the Barracuda since that's why we are here.
Spice it back up a bit.
So I'm just going to give you some quick stats here for those in the back. The Barracuda are currently 4-2-0-1 because they have overtime losses and shootout losses, and the AHL has too many stats.
Yeah.
4-2-0-1, which is good for 9 points. They're third in the AHL's Pacific Division. Their special teams have been good or bad depending on which side of the special teams they are on. Their power play is kind of putrid, only clicking at 14.8%, which is good for 27th in the AHL as a whole and 9th in the 10-team Pacific Division. Their penalty kill is absolutely outstanding, though. 96.7%, good for first in the AHL, which is obviously good for first in their division. Which is probably good because the Barracuda are by far the most penalized team in the AHL. Obviously, the last game against Tucson with all the misconducts obviously added to that number significantly.
100 penalty minutes pregame.
Yeah. So obviously that added to that number. But there's still, I think if you watch the games, though, I think penalties, their penchant for taking penalties is definitely a concern with this team. Would you agree with that, Kevin?
Yeah. I know. I'm happy to see mainly that the penalty kill is at a league leading 96% because last year they were at a league leading or league worst 61% or
bad.
Something atrocious like that, and their power play was good last year. So I think their power play is going to come around. This team is too much offense to not do that. But my big concern this season was, now that the Barracuda have forwards, now that they have goaltending, my goodness, have they had the goaltending so far? How will the defense prove themselves? Because if they still can't hang, then they all have to go. And so far, they're hanging in there pretty well. And with that penalty kill unit leading the way there, I mean, I said I thought it wasn't just all on the defense. I thought the forwards did a horrible job back checking last year to even help out the defense. You bring in Agazzino. We talked about it with Nick on our last show. Bring in Agazzino, bring in Cease, bring in Luke Johnson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not surprised about the PK at all. And the penalty troubles, Jeff Viel's got to get out of the box. Patrick Seeloff, surprised he's still seeing games, gotta get out of the box. And then poor Pat McNally comes in and officially gets one game played with zero time
minutes
on ice.
Yeah. Adam Raskot is another guy
out.
who I really like, but also has taken some really boneheaded penalties. And I think that the part that frustrates me, I think, is because anytime I feel like they get any momentum, they take themselves out of games with some of these penalties. And they got away with it early on, but when they started playing like the Ontarios and the Tucsons, that didn't fly at all.
Yeah, and when you're mentioning Adam Raska, he's got to watch himself because he's not the best skater. He does look like he's a little bit better of a skater so far this after off-season training and everything like that. His offense hasn't come through, though. He's a penalty machine. Yes, he hits with aplomb, but, you know, Ozzzy Wiesblatt hits with aplomb, too. And, you know, he's got to be chomping at the bit trying to get into the lineup. And I don't mean Wichita's lineup. I mean the Barracuda's lineup. So Adam Raska really has to watch himself because this team has so many bodies.
Yeah.
And as they have the last few years. But now we're talking former first-round picks that can't even get into the lineup. Players really... I'm surprised that John McCarthy has given them the long leash. I'm glad he has because it gives them an opportunity to kind of make amends for themselves, but that leash is going to get tight, I think, here soon.
Yeah, the other thing I thought too, I'm glad you brought up the defense because something that I was very kind of critical of, but really eye-opening was the game, the first game against Tucson, or was it the first game against Tucson? I think
that was the one I was at.
Was that the game that Hadaka missed?
That was the second. That was Saturday's. Oh, the game he missed.
Yes.
Sorry, I thought you meant when Hadaka just completely ate it and got burned.
No, he missed a game and
he missed Friday's game. Onyebuchi came
right, and I thought
Seeloff still played, which I was shocked.
But I thought I really like Hadaka because I feel like he's the one guy who can not only make a good first pass, but he's probably one of the best skaters among the blue line.
Yeah.
And not having him in the lineup that one game just showed how deep as a puddle this blue line is. Because I thought it really disrupted their game pretty significantly.
Yeah. It definitely did. And, I mean, I think the Barracuda threw themselves a pity party on Friday night after they had the goal disallowed for reasons. For coughing on the opposing goalie when from 6 feet away. I don't know when Tucson went back the other way and scored 45 seconds after that, and then that was all she wrote for that game. So you can't be that fragile. So you still see some of that fragility from last season creeping in a bit, and it will take time. I think overall, I've really liked Artemi Knyatsev's turnaround this year in season number 2. That was one of the things I really focused in on, and so far through a month, he's been outstanding. Nick Cicek, you guys all know, I think he's a guy. Mm-hmm. He's there. He's getting third pair minutes, and I think that's fine. Ryan Merkley, though, I'm not seeing progression. I'm seeing he's doing fine. I'm not seeing the progression he needs, though.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Merkley because obviously when I said Hadaka is the only guy that can make a good first pass and get out of the zone, obviously not including Ryan Merkley, who can also do that. I think the thing with Ryan Merkley that concerns me is just his penchant, and I've said this before, his penchant for just skating the puck to nowhere. And then
that is
getting just
boy, oh boy, that could not be more accurate, Ian.
He just kind of skates the puck to nowhere and he just doesn't make a decision. And then obviously you run out of time and space. And in the NHL, that time and space is going to get lost significantly quicker. I don't think Ryan Merkley's been bad, but I feel like you want to see him really kick down the door to get on the NHL team. And I still like the player a lot, and I still think there's an NHL player there, but I'm a little concerned at this point because I feel like sometimes his inability to just make a decision with the puck is you're not going to get that time in the NHL. You're going to get.
I think with Ryan Merkley, what I'm concerned is he loses the time because he can't figure out what he wants to do. Mm-hmm. and then he tries to do something fancy to get out of
Right.
it and just makes it that much worse.
Yeah.
That's the issue. If he can just make a quicker pass, a quicker decision, I think he's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Because he's got the skill.
Yeah.
But it's almost like when he has time to think, as with most players, if you're just reactionary, you're probably going to be okay.
Mhm.
Shootouts, for example, don't think about what you're going to do. Just go do it. Like, that's Ryan Merkley's style of defense. And yeah, that's why I say I don't think there's enough progression there.
I think I will say this, though. I think on the defensive side of the puck, he's been fine this year. Like, I haven't really had any issues with his quote-unquote defense. Yeah. I think he's actually made improvements there. It's
absolutely
the offensive side of the puck where you would want to see him excel is where I have concerns. Because I think defensively, I think he's been fine.
Yeah, actually, I can only think of one poor defensive play that I'm going to say that happened to him in the defensive zone, because it was a puck that flipped up over his stick. And I was like, the crowd groaned, but I was like, honestly, I'm going to give him a pass on that. Other than that, yeah, he's been really solid defensively, and his positioning has really improved a lot. That's where I will say there has been progression, is where to place himself in the defensive zone. I've been really impressed with that.
Yeah.
One of the things, Lacey, you were saying about Merkley, though, is exactly kind of the reason why or at least the last few years, been a bit higher on Knyazhev, is just because I feel like watching Merkley, it's almost like he, I don't know, doesn't think the end result is offense or goals or assists. It's like, I want to get here in the fanciest or the coolest way possible, and I'm going to try and skate through these 2 or 3 people. Whereas Knyazhev, I feel like he's a bit simpler and has a lot of the skills you need to create that offense, whether it's skating out or the nice pass, but he just finds a way to get the puck to the net, I find, a lot more. Whereas, like, I'm left thinking half the time watching Merkley, wow, that was amazing, but nothing came out of it. Whereas Knyazhev, I'm like, that was a decent play, and he got an assist.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really astute assessment. I agree 1,000% with everything you just said about both of those players.
Yeah, and you had, and like in your article, Mark, you had Merkley. I think you had Merkley slightly ahead of Knyazhev.
Yeah, so it actually, I've reversed them. Last year I had Knyazhev ahead, and then this year I had Merkley ahead, simply because of how much his puck handling abilities I thought translated at the NHL level. Because I did think he dummied people last year, even in the NHL, which I was like, okay, if he can rely on his skill that much at the NHL level, I'm confident in him, like, being a productive player. But I'm still heavily concerned about the things all of us were just saying, that I just don't know if I think he thinks himself out of offense.
Yeah.
Like, he gets himself to the point where it's like, wow, that was awesome. But he's just not like, he's like the anti-Pavelski. Pavelski would always find ways to generate offense, being in the right place, just hockey IQ, whereas I just don't think Merkley has that, or at least has shown it at the professional level.
Yeah, and I mean, look at his stats, guys. What did Merkley have? 2 goals last year for this high power offensive threat from the blue line?
Yeah.
So obviously the Barracuda have an affiliation, obviously an official affiliation with the Wichita Thunder of the ECHL, which is new to the Sharks. They haven't had a ECHL affiliate since the Bulls. Am I right there, Kevin?
Wow, I hadn't thought about that. No, it has to be the Allen Americans. It's got to be.
Yeah,
Allen.
You're probably right. It's probably Allen.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's been a while. They kind of just pawned players off on the Solar Bears last year when they could, but no official still. So obviously they've used their official affiliation. Currently, Strauss-Mann has been sent down there. Obviously, I think the game he played in San Jose for the Barracuda, he was fine. I don't think I know kind of like, the Barracuda lost. Sorry, the Sharks lose so much that I just substituted in. The Barracuda lost and Strauss-Mann went to the ECHL. Obviously, that's bad news. No, it's not. It's fine. They just need to keep him playing because obviously the AHL schedule is not as intense as the NHL schedule. And when you have 2 goalies that are already playing really well, it's hard to fit the third guy in. Strauss-Mann, to his credit, won the Player of the Week in the ECHL with 2 wins, a 2.00 goals against average, and a .351 save percentage, so good on him. Obviously a little bit lesser competition down there, but that's exactly what you want to see from a guy who has been given an opportunity to kind of pick up some games, taking advantage of that affiliation. What did you think
especially when if we're talking the ECHL, anything over a 905 save percentage in the ECHL is excellent.
Yeah, because there's no defense there, let's be honest.
Yeah.
What was your any takeaways from Strauss-Mann's only game up with the Barracuda?
I loved, like a tiger in our Discord chat had thrown it out there that night, that Mann had a propensity to give up the early goal when he was in college for Michigan. And that's something that was news to me. So to give up a goal on your first North American professional shot, that sucks, but it was a nice shot by Rasmus Kapari, and Mann really then settled in. Mann is, to me, always going to have that uphill battle because he is much smaller than Aaron Dell and Eetu Mäkiniemi, but he is just as fundamentally sound and has probably, I don't know, Aaron Dell's a pretty athletic goalie, so Mann's definitely there with Dell. Now I feel like I'm discrediting McInerney's athletic ability. But yeah, it's just it's nice to have this hydra of goaltending at this point. And I think everything's going to be just fine with Strauss-Mann. But again, it's a matter of who's going to be able to step up and take the reins with more goaltending coming in. I know Mark's going to talk about some more goaltending coming in here later on in our show. And yeah, I mean, it does suck for Strauss-Mann. Played the Olympics, played on one of the best teams in Sweden last year, and now playing in the ECHL because of the numbers game.
Yeah, I mean, he looked really good in camp too.
Really good in camp, absolutely. And
yeah,
I liked how he played in that first game with Barracuda.
Yeah, especially after not getting any action really, and then just coming into that game. I thought he did himself really well. I mean, goaltending as a whole, I think, has been a plus for the Barracuda this year. I think Aaron Dell's been really good. I think Mäkiniemi's been very good. And obviously, look at they plan on, I think everything in San Jose right now is, at least what we're being sold is everything's a meritocracy. So obviously, Dell being the veteran guy is the guy that they're going to go with first until somebody takes the net away from him. And obviously, it's harder for Strauss-Mann, who's obviously been assigned to the ECHL, to kind of factor into that. But so Mäkiniemi's kind of gotten a chance, but I think Mäkiniemi's been really good too. Goaltending hasn't really been the issue in any of the Barracuda's 3 losses.
No. And where did I want to go with this? Oh, Aaron Dell, you also have to remember, used to be the teammate with the head coach, John McCarthy. So there's also that relationship there too. But Aaron Dell, by no means whatsoever, has not deserved, he's deserved to play in the games that he's played, and he's played great. So he continues to deserve to get the starts that he's going to get. Had no problem with Aaron Dell in that. It's when you're looking long term, it's right. I'd like to see Mann get another start in there, things like that. But yeah, so far I'm okay with the goaltending deployment.
Well, that's what I would ask you guys in general, is what your thoughts are in terms of Dell's purpose with the franchise. Is he there for a mentor type position because he's a veteran and he's a guy they know they can trust in the AHL, or also call up in the event one of our NHL goalies gets hurt? Do you think he's someone who maybe eventually will fill in if we end up trading a goalie? What exactly do you think the long-term plan is with him with the Sharks? Or is he just literally here because we needed a goalie that was proven in the AHL to start the season?
I think it's twofold. I think because of the lack of experience that Mäkiniemi and Strauss-Mann both have playing AHL hockey, that they didn't want goaltending to be their undoing. Not to say that goaltending was the complete story over the last 2 seasons, but it definitely was a story. And I think they wanted to have that safety cushion, because I think they want, if your NHL club's going to be crappy, you want your AHL club to show some promise. You need to show some sign of there's going to be progress. You just have to be patient, and some of these guys are going to come up and they're going to take the reins and everything's going to be fine. The worst thing that could happen to the Sharks this year, I think, was having the Barracuda be undone by goaltending again. And then obviously that casting a dark shadow over the future of the franchise. So I think Dell is a guy who could come in and not only mentor a guy like, Makiniemi and Strauss-Mann, but also be a safety blanket. Whereas, because we know that he can play AHL hockey and he's a very good AHL goalie. And I think having him there to also instill that, like I said earlier, the meritocracy, right? Like you have to, in order to take the job, you have to take it from one of these veteran guys. And I think it's kind of twofold. And then obviously we all think that James Reimer's not going to be here when the season ends, and they're going to need a guy to go back up and back up Kaapo Kähkönen. And Aaron Dell is, again, a guy who's can very serviceably do that. Or they might send someone else up to do it. But again, he's a guy that's been there, done that. He's a known quantity for this franchise, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Well said. I think that Aaron Dell, the funny thing is, if Aaron Dell keeps playing the way he's played, I don't think he's a guy who gets claimed off waivers or anything like that. But I think they would consider keeping him in the AHL so that they don't have to burn one of their 4 exemptions or whatever it is, calling him up after the deadline and bringing him back down when the Sharks inevitably don't make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. I think a lot of that's going to depend on what the Barracuda look like, because I think they've gotten off to a good start, but we have started to see some holes in the armor a little bit now.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to go next. Is actually, before I go there, while we're on the topic of the ECHL, obviously Ozzzy Wiesblatt was sent down but didn't play, so it's I'm curious to see what the plan is with Ozzzy, because I think he's a guy who plays a similar role to a lot of guys on the Barracuda that are veteran guys, which makes it harder to put him in the lineup. But I don't like that he's not playing at all.
I'm perplexed by that. Why Wiesblatt's not playing? Because I can think of 2 guys right now. I've mentioned Adam Raska, again, a guy I like, but Adam Raska and Max Verano, both players who I think you could take out of the lineup immediately and put Ozzzy Wiesblatt in. And I know that Max Verano was the leading scorer in the Swedish league last year. That was still a signing where I thought, I remember how he played for Belleville before he went to the Swedish Hockey League. And he was a borderline AHL player then. So, yeah, you give him the opportunity to say, hey, this player progressed tremendously overseas. Let's give him another shot. But so far, he's not looking like much of anything. He's not fast. He's not creating offense. He's part of the power play, talking about it being among the lowest in the league. Max Verano plays on that power play unit. So I would put Ozzzy in, because I do think that they need to get him into some games. Again, being a first-round pick doesn't mean he's going to be a top 6 forward, but he needs to get some games in so that he can eventually, hopefully, be a third-line player for the Sharks.
Yeah, Mark, a guy that I always like to kind of compare Ozzzy to is like a Raffi Torres. Would you think that is an apt comparison?
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not saying that Ozzy's going to go and end people's careers, but
yeah, I think down the line his role could develop into that kind of that third line player who's a bit of a pest, but also has some offensive abilities. He's a good skater. With him, my main thing has just always been upside. You know, I think we reached a tiny bit when we drafted him. I think if we had flipped a few of those picks that year, you wouldn't have gotten any questions from me. And I liked kind of how he responded in that first season after COVID came back. I thought he was kind of an offensive leader, but I didn't really see much development out of him last year. Now he was on a pretty mediocre, if not bad, team. But yeah, I think that draft, he might end up being one of the ones that we look at as like, okay, he may carve out an NHL role, but considering he was the first rounder that we used, again, last pick of the first round.
Yeah, I was gonna say like that's an
weird.
important point too, right? Like, because I know it's obviously like people like look at first round like, oh, he's a first round, yeah, but he was 31st overall,
Exactly.
so you
basically
like,
a second rounder.
Yeah, basically a second rounder.
Yeah, but the Torres comparison is fair. I at least hope that's the role he could provide in the future. If he turns into Raffi Torres minus the injury causing, I think that would be a blessing for the Sharks. That would be that's a very useful piece in the NHL.
Those players you need those
rally
guys.
Teams. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's kind of always been my take too, right? Like you need those guys. Like he could turn into a guy. I don't know what to do with him because I don't like the fact that he's not playing. You could send him back to Prince Albert, but I think they would probably want to trade him because they are in a rebuilding situation, from what I've been told. So I don't know what you do with him. Do you send him back to junior for an overage year? Do you send him to the E and actually get him in games? Like I just want to see him playing.
Yeah,
because I think not playing, like, that's frustrating to me.
That's the worst case scenario to me. So is him not playing at all?
Right,
being
like
that 13th, 14th forward, it makes no sense from an asset management standpoint. So I don't want to see him go back to juniors. I want to see him playing professional hockey, and I think the Sharks do too. But the Sharks and Joe Will need to make a decision on this and do it pretty quickly.
What would you do, Mark?
I would start off with giving him those minutes at least in the ECHL. Like, I don't know why you send him down there and don't play him.
Right.
So I would send him down there, have him at least get in a game or two, get his feet going. And then, if he's good enough to be playing in the AHL, play him. But I mean, look, it's very rare that there's like NHL players that end up spending significant amount of time in the ECHL.
Right.
But in this situation where the Sharks brought in a bunch of veterans to boost the AHL team, and we're also with a logjam of guys coming up from juniors and other areas, like I can see there being a struggle to find that roster space. So it's kind of a different scenario than normal. So why not get him a few games? But him not playing, like you guys said, is the biggest concern because he's in that crucial age where you need minutes.
Would you send him back to junior?
I wouldn't. No, I think he's kind of served his time there.
And with that, I know a couple of people in the chat and definitely on Twitter over the last week to week and a half talked about, is this considered a demotion when Wiesblatt was sent down to the ECHL? And no, I think it's, and especially when you talk about Strauss-Mann. And no, I don't think it's a demotion. I do think it's a numbers thing. But even then, I think we need to stop considering the ECHL as a demotion because, as Mark said, the Sharks and a lot of other teams have drafted and developed and signed out of college a lot of really good quality young players. Like it's rising up. It's becoming harder to make AHL rosters, NHL rosters. And so the ECHL is on the rise. So I think given that the Sharks haven't had an ECHL affiliate for 4 years, I believe it was, maybe 5. And then before that, it was just the dumping ground. Alex Shaneborn later,
right? Zachary
things like that. I think we need to stop. We need to start training our fan base more to. Yeah, there's still some development that can be done at the ECHL because it's still a good league.
Yeah, and I think it's
better than where I play.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, ECHL guys would show up at like your local pickup game and dust all of you. Yeah, and I think that's the thing too. I think like because the ECHL obviously has a lot of negative connotations, being like kind of like, the Wild West, like where the fighting is. That's where that's where you go and play for Slapshot, and right. So it kind of has that reputation as being just this no talent goon league, which I think still is apt. But I think that when you have an affiliation like this, I don't think like you should automatically just assume, oh, well, your first round pick just went to ECHL. Well, clearly he's a bust. I mean, he's only 20, whatever. Right? Like I feel like there is some mental training that we need to do to kind of, and I think you're right. I think it's also on people that cover the team to kind of be like, hey, like the ECHL is still a pro league. And it's not the end of the world if a guy does a couple of games. Or like, obviously, look at if Ozzzy Wiesblatt spends the entire year in the E, that's a problem.
That's a
big problem. Until that happens, like if he goes there for a couple of games, like Strauss Mann, again, a guy who, by all accounts, I think universally praised in camp, looked good in the Barracuda game he played. Him being in the ECHL isn't a detriment on him. It's, like he got starts. He's not Zachary Emond. And I hate to beat up on Zachary Emond, but I think that's the perfect comparable in this situation.
Especially when you think that Zach Emond was recalled when Mann was sent down.
Right.
Because Wichita still has a goalie under contract themselves. So that just says like how far down Zach Emond is on the depth chart. And that is one where you'd say, yeah, there's your typical ECHL guy there.
Right. Like he's a guy who, who's not going to start any AHL games unless there's injuries abound and, like heaven forbid a guy on the Sharks goes down and they have to call somebody up and then someone on the Barracuda gets injured, then Zachary Emond gets to play. But like that's like the only thing where I could see Zachary Emond dressing for a game. Like
the Sharks are one injury away from this being sorted out in the goaltending.
It's true, and we don't want that to happen, but you're not wrong.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say. So I think we just have to kind of change our mindset on the ECHL when it comes to situations like this, because I think not all ECHL players or assignments are equal.
I do want to kind of transition. This might actually transition over towards the prospect talk more, the players who aren't even on the Barracuda yet. But I do want to kind of get a few more names in, players that I think have really thrived. And ironically, it comes right from the numerical roster. If you check the AHL website, it just goes right in order. Jasper Weatherby, Thomas Bordeleau, Andrew Agazzino, and Tristan Robbins. They're to me the four most noticeable players on the Barracuda so far this season. Like Weatherby is looking like a guy who's very agitated about being in the AHL. I don't think he is agitated, but he plays like someone who's very agitated about spending half the season last season in the NHL and now is fighting for minutes in the AHL. Yeah. He's playing like a guy who doesn't, is trying to prevent that from happening in the future. I think he's been outstanding. I don't think he has any goals yet, but he's a force out there. Thomas Bordeleau, we'll talk about Thomas Bordeleau all day, but he's been fantastic. But I think Andrew Agazzino has been a great compliment for him, though. Like it almost seems like for me, the play starts with Agazzino and finishes with Bordeleau. And if it doesn't finish with Bordeleau, it's Tristan Robbins, who's the player for me who I was like, I want to see what he can do at the AHL level. And Tristan Robbins is just lighting up the lamp.
Yeah, I've been really, really impressed with Tristan Robbins so far. I think Thomas Bordeleau, to me, and it seems like there's a little bit of division in the fandom about this. To me, Thomas Bordeleau is the guy that if someone goes down, like that is your first call up is Thomas Bordeleau. Like he is the guy that I think he could be in the NHL right now and he would be fine.
I think so too.
What have you thought about Eklund so far?
Eklund's been okay, but I do think that the folks who, and there are folks who question William Eklund's top end upside so far have been justified with the way Eklund has played. I think Eklund has been very good, but you expect a player like him to stand out more. The way Tristan Robbins has. Tristan Robbins is a water bug. He's all over the ice, and he so far is pretty much scoring from anywhere he shoots. So I think that's what we expected out of William Eklund. I think the game he has played has been fine. He's been willing to go into the dirty areas. He doesn't care if he's the smallest guy out there. I think he's been fine, but he's not producing at the clip I think most of us expected.
Yeah, I think there's another guy that I put in that category too that are not producing at the level I thought they would, and the other guy is Daniel Gushkin.
Knew it.
He's
and
a guy
that's
who
Mark's guy, so I'm curious to hear Mark's thoughts on that because I know Mark loves Daniel Gushkin.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. So what you guys said about Robbins is kind of actually one of the things that I do like about him is that even at the junior ranks, the one thing I thought that was translatable to the NHL level was his shot. I've thought he's a sniper since the first times I watched him in juniors. And the one thing is, like, if you've got an NHL shot and you round out your game, you're going to have an NHL career. And I think that's one of the things that I'd be looking for from him this year. And it seems like he's doing that. I did expect Gushchin to be more dominant. He looked pretty decent in that short stint last year. Like, he was definitely noticeable. He wasn't necessarily producing a lot of numbers, but at the end of the season, you watch those games, you could see him, cycling with the puck in the offensive zone, going end to end a bit. And I thought he was going to be kind of a dominating force. Now, the one thing with him, though, is, yeah, he's absolutely my boy. I've been following him at the junior levels, and I like his game, but I definitely view him as a boom or bust player. Like, I could see a guy like we've talked about with Wiesblatt, Robbins. These guys can carve out roles, I think, in a third line. With Gushchin, it's either like top six or he's not going to be in the NHL. Yeah. So, his slow-ish start is kind of concerning to me. I'm not jumping off his bandwagon yet, but it's definitely something. Yeah, it's definitely something that I'm keeping an eye on.
I think the one thing with Gushchin that always concerned me about his game transitioning from junior to pro was, like, Gushchin likes to do a lot of things himself, and I found that, like, even early on in camp, like him and Eklund would be on, and you'd think that would be such a great pair, except for they were trying to do everything themselves and ignoring the fact that the other guy was on the ice. I think that hasn't really been an issue for him so far. I think he's been good. He's used the ice he's given. He's used his line mates a lot better. I think Eklund, I don't have any issues with his game. Would I call him up right now? No. I think he's doing all the right things. And I feel like with Eklund, the dam's going to break. And it has, like, I mean, and it's not to say Eklund hasn't done anything. He has scored a couple goals so far. I feel like he's doing all the right things. I think a lot of criticisms of Eklund's game coming into this year, not being a little too soft, in puck battles and stuff. I think that's not an issue. I think he's been very, absolutely, like you said, Kevin, just tenacious on people with the puck, really pesty. As far as, like, getting into the battles and stuff, I don't think that's been an issue. I think if he keeps doing everything, and, like, I think the thing with Eklund is you just hope he doesn't get discouraged by the lack of production that maybe we were expecting,
especially coupled with his statistical struggles at every level last year.
Yep. Yeah, and I think so. I just think as long as he sticks with it, like, I feel like if the dam breaks, then it's gonna be awesome. But we said that with a few players on the Sharks last year, and the dam never really broke. So I think that's, that would be my concern with Eklund. I don't think, like, I'm not worried about Eklund as a pick or as a player. I still think he's the best guy. Like, I think he's the best prospect ceiling wise we have.
Yep.
So I just hope he just doesn't get discouraged. I think if he keeps playing the way he is, it's going to work out for him. It can't not work out for him. So I think that's my take on Eklund. Any other players that have stood out or not stood out in a bad way, Kevin, before we move on?
I already mentioned Barano. I haven't seen anything of note there. I mean, Gushchin, I think, was playing with him too there. I think you're bang on, though. Gushchin is trying to do it all himself. I don't really notice him out there, but when I do, it seems like he's got a lot of Jaden Halbgewachs tendencies. That bothers me. because Jaden Halbgewachs was a guy who didn't use his teammates and that kept getting forced to the outside. And so far, that's what Gushchin's doing. But Gushchin, obviously, far younger than Halbgewachs was. So
is he? And this is kind of a blast from the past. Is he a poor man's Goldobin?
The thing is, though, Goldobin still found ways to make impact, at least when he was on the Barracuda.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, like I said, it's really early, so I don't want to be like, oh, Gushkin's a boss. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say.
I think the one other one I would say would be Scott Reedy, as far as a little bit of a disappointment.
Yeah.
Just because Scott Reedy so far hasn't quite shown that. Last year his bread and butter was being in front of the net and potting power play goals. And that might actually be part of a significant part of why the Barracuda power play has struggled. Is he's the primary scorer there on that power play, and it's just not happening. He's in the right spots. It's just it doesn't seem like he's getting the chances. But he did score on Saturday, and go figure, he scored from the point on Saturday of all places. So I would like to see more of that, because I want to see more of a rounded offensive game from Scott Reedy. I don't want to see him only score from in front of the net, because heck, you could just throw anyone there in that spot. So, but I do want to see a little bit more out of Reedy.
Yeah, fair enough. So obviously we talked about the goaltending logjam that we have this year, and it's only going to get worse next year. Mark, one of the guys that will be obviously turning pro next year, I would assume, would be Magnus Krona from Denver. How's his season going so far? What can you tell us about him?
So his season has actually been really good. It's kind of funny. I watched 2 Denver games this year, and they happened to be his only 2 horrible games.
Oh, no.
So I watched his 2 games in the weekend series against UMass, and UMass pretty much stomped them on the scoreboard, not actually on the ice, but they beat them both games, combined score, I think it was 7-2. And Krona was in for all but an empty netter between those 2 games, and he just didn't look confident at all. And there were a lot of weird goals in those 2 games, weird bounces, kind of going off defenseman's legs, but he just didn't look like he was getting good visibility of the puck. He didn't look like he was tracking it right, and he just looked off. Like, when you see a goalie and they're shaky and there should be a save that they trap, but it bounces out and causes a rebound. That's kind of how he looked those games. That being said, every other game he's been amazing. So he's only given up 5 goals, or 6 goals in the other 5 games this year. So
wow.
Denver, another top team this year. They were ranked number 1 coming in. A lot of that is due to Magnus Krona, and he's had a great college career. He's another one of those big goalies. I think he's like 6'5".
Yeah.
Sound positioning. He's not very aggressive. Like, he's not the guy who's a roamer. If you think back to Martin Jones, not that I want to give people nightmares, but like you think back to how everyone raved about how he's like positionally sound, and that was kind of his bread and butter early on. That's kind of how Magnus Krona is as well. So yeah, this is his last year of college. He should be going pro next year. I think he's a prospect that Sharks fans should keep an eye on. And we all know goalies are weird, right? Like, he's only 22 years old. He could maybe hit his peak at 26 or 27. So it might be a little while. And Sharks are also in this weird logjam we haven't had in quite some time with goalies. Like, I'm talking like Kiprusoff Toskala days last time we were like this, right? So you have all these goalies. So it's going to be a matter of finding space for him. But I would expect him to at least be in the ECHL next year. And then depending on what happens with our goalies, possibly AHL. I mean, a lot can happen there. But he's definitely someone that everyone should be keeping an eye on. Also, Denver might be going for a defending championship type season. So
yeah, because here's the thing with the goaltending, right? Sorry, Kevin, I didn't mean to cut you off. But here's the thing with the goaltending is it says not only Magnus Krona next year, like Ben Gaudreau could also turn pro next year. And then you still have Mäkiniemi, you still have Strauss-Mann. Like, it's going to be fascinating to see how that goes. Sorry, Kevin, I did not mean to cut you off.
Oh, well, in that vein, I could see Krona going to Sweden next year, just because if the Sharks retain his rights, which at the moment I think they would, I could see them looking at other outlets, because again, the Sharks might be in this exact same situation next year. Maybe Aaron Dell and James Reimer are the only goalies who depart, and they still need to find spots for everyone. So,
yeah, and he's from Sweden. He played juniors there, so the place he's familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Cam Lund, obviously, guy who a lot of people were excited about after the rookie tournament. How's he performing so far?
I think he's actually performing pretty well for the fact that he's a true freshman. Uh, Watched a few of the Northeastern games, and I like what I see from him with the puck. I don't necessarily love what I see from him away from the puck. I think he has obviously some growing to do, and he's one of those players that I look at kind of like this new trend in college where if you're a top 2-round pick or someone who's just developing at a pretty good pace from a later round, you usually do those 2 years in college and then make the move after that. I think he'll be a player similar to that. I think this year will be kind of a adjustment phase. He'll adjust to the game in college because it's obviously harder and more physical and bigger than what he's played previously. And then next year will be the year where you kind of hope for him to kind of take control of that team. But you're seeing when you watch them a lot of what you saw even in the prospect scrimmages with him, where he'll take the puck end to end. When he's in the offensive zone, he's cycling, he's making moves, and he's beating guys one-on-one. So far, he's got, I think, 6 assists, 4 or 5 of which are primary assists. And he's looked the part for a guy who's only 8 games into his college career. So right now he's been switching up between the second and the first line, but he's getting power play minutes as well, where they've actually had him on the point, which I found kind of interesting. So I'm interested to see kind of how he develops with that. He's definitely like the playmaker, the play creator on that power play when he's out there. So I think it's a good spot for him to be in, and I think Northeastern's a good place for him to be developing.
Yeah, I like it's a good, like, it's just always seems to be a good program. The other guy we have on the list here, go ahead, sorry.
Isn't Northeastern usually part of the Beanpot tournament too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Northeastern, Harvard, BU, and BC.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, random question I had to throw out there.
Yeah, so obviously, another guy that the Sharks have currently playing college, Alex Young, a 2020 7th round pick, playing for Colgate. How's he faring for a 7th round pick?
Decent. Fans may remember like this highlight reel goal he had a couple years ago that made its way around the internet. I'm not sure necessarily how much I would be looking into his future, but in the role he's in, he's playing pretty well. Colgate's not like a top end program, right, but they have a competitive team, and he's put up some points. He had decent numbers last year, and generally when I watch him, I just like, he's got a good all around game. He plays smart off and on the puck. He's physical, not like he's like a bruiser or anything like that, but he plays like a rough, edgy game. And I really like his shot. Like, I've noticed they keep him on the power play kind of in that OV territory where it's like right above the circle, and he scored multiple goals there, just like rifling shots and then creeping in, getting close to the net. So I think he's got some good hockey IQ and he's got some raw abilities, maybe develops into a pro, but I like what I've seen from definitely at the college level.
And how long would he have till he would turn pro, do you think?
I think he'd probably stay the full 4 years. Yeah. So he's a ways away, but I think of the guys we're talking about, Lund, I think will be a 2-year guy. Obviously, we know Corona's towards the end of his career. And then Young, I'd say, will probably stay the full 4 years and then jump to pro at the AHL level, I guess.
Cool. That is
I was stuff. Really... Alex Young is one of those players who I remember we did our draft show that year. In fact, I think it was Mark's first show, now that I think about it. And we were like, Alex Young got drafted. I mean, he's there. We don't know what we were going to get out of him, but like something felt right with that one. Like I think it'd be a poor comparison with like Joe Pavelski, Torrey Mitchell. I don't think he's going to be that good, that type of NHLer. But seeing him in the prospect camps that he's participated in, the very first thing I think of is what a lethal shot. And he's got a fierceness to his game. He's not the biggest player, like Mark said, but he'll go in there, like what we're talking about with Eklund. He doesn't care. Yeah. He'll still go do what he has to do. I could see Alex Young being, starting out his pro career as like a middle line player on the Barracuda, and then, being a 7th round pick. Who knows? But I don't think we should write him off. There's something there.
Yeah, he's got a lot of heart, and that goes a long way. Like you were saying, the Pavelski comparison, maybe not as much productivity or abilities as Pavelski, but I see a lot of that. Like he just makes things happen.
Yeah. You can't put he's got an intangible. There's something about him that I think about him among the Sharks prospects from time to time. So
and I think, and again, like seventh rounders are found money. Like if they turn out this, it's just found money, right? Like so.
If you get NHL games from them, that's already a win.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. So it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out. I think going forward, I think the Barracuda's next game is Sunday against the Calgary Wranglers.
Yeah, the ultra rare Sunday Tuesday back to back. That almost never happens in the AHL, but the Barracuda are up in Calgary here at the end of this week, and so they basically get almost a full week off, and then Sunday, Tuesday, and then they return home for the 10th, 12th, and 13th, who check the AHL website, sjbarracuda.com, for opponents there.
Ontario.
I don't have that one off the top. Yeah, Ontario, I do believe's in there.
Which is, Ontario definitely looks like they are going to be a force in that Pacific Division.
That Ontario was my pick to win the division this season. Sorry, Barracuda fans, but they were my pick to win the division this year.
Yeah, I think they're going to.
I think the Barracuda are doing very well where they're at. 4-2-1. Obviously, that's when you're looking from a wins-losses standpoint. That's only one more win than loss. But sitting in third in the division, I picked them to be right around 5th, 6th, so I'm happy with how they've played so far. They got to get back on the winning track after the back-to-back losses.
Yeah, definitely a thing that they need to do. Anything else you guys want to hit before we send everyone home happy, I hope?
The controversy around Tech CU Arena.
Oh, what? Spill it.
So, as you probably have listened on the AHL TV feed when it's working, and it's not a Barracuda thing, folks. AHL TV on the whole, for some reason, keeps having outages, and I don't know what's up with that. But it's not a Barracuda thing. What is a Barracuda thing is the fans' frustration over the goal song change that incurred this season. There had been discussion since the end of last season about a goal song change, and then the preseason happened, no change whatsoever. Same horn, same song, and then all of a sudden, opening night, they started using the Sharks goal horn, a recording of it that could be improved, I think. Make it sound at least a little bit more realistic. But the goal song right now does not engage the fans whatsoever, and that's been a big problem. And I think the next time the Barracuda come home, there might be a change in order. I don't know what direction they're going. The team is listening, but I do know that I've been to all but one home game so far, and been a big buzz about that goal song and how it's something.
How's it been though? Like, how's the atmosphere been in the new arena?
Atmosphere has been good. Obviously, opening night being, I don't know if I never got the actual statistic on attendance for opening night, but I'm sold that it was a sellout, because between the number of fans who were standing and walking around combined with the seats that were empty, I think they sold that building out. Since then, though, it's been a disappointment in terms of turnout goes. But in terms of the atmosphere, that buzz is still alive. I'm loving being there. The arena is great. They're just going to continue to add to it. But I think
there's a lot going on too. Like, I feel like
there has been a lot going on.
I feel like as you get into like deeper into the season, I think turnout might tick up a little bit. Like right now you have baseball playoffs
and what hurt on Saturday with Hoptoberfest, that was the game I couldn't make, was the Hoptoberfest game. The game that I really wanted to go to. But I had other plans. But the Barracuda were fighting with another event going on at the Ice Center there competing with San Jose State having both their homecoming game and the memorial game for the player who died last week. So there was just a lot of activity going around there that I think some fans they made other decisions other than going to the game because there was just too much happening in that area.
Yeah, AJ in the chat saying that Tech CU was announced as a sellout for the first game. So
perfect. I believe it. So again, I've said it year after year. The fans are there. The Sharks and the Barracuda just need to find a way of tapping into that fandom and bringing fans out to the building. So I agree with you, Ian. I think that there will be an uptick in people in the building. I think
as other sports die down, I think you will see an uptick in attendance. Like obviously with baseball playoffs, obviously football's in full swing, and let's be honest, football is king in the Bay Area.
Absolutely. So, and it's still a fun time. If you haven't been out to the games yet, please come out on November 10th, or if not the 10th, come out on the 12th.
Yeah,
or the 13th, or all three.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I guess that'll be it for us tonight. I do appreciate everyone coming in. We will definitely I'm gonna try and get this scheduled a little more regularly. My work schedule is just kind of funny, and then like with the one thing with obviously doing the Barracuda and the Sharks at the same time is sometimes you end up in a situation like last week where there was like just a game every night, and it's like, where am I gonna do a show in here? But we will definitely try to be more regular. Obviously, I think at some point we'll have to get Nick back on and for him to give us his takes on what's going on. But obviously, I appreciate Mark being here. I hope you enjoyed yourself, Mark, on your very first TTG.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good conversation.
Awesome. And Kevin, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts? A couple things. Okay. Found out yesterday, Eric Landy is now working in the building right next to mine in downtown San Jose. So that's kind of funny. So I saw him in the lobby right after we both got drenched by that downpour. We did need the rain, though. So anyway, hi, Eric. In the chat, we got a question here. What's been the cost difference between going to the Barracuda and at SAP versus Tech CU? Pretty minimal. It is up a couple bucks. I paid for my seats because I just sat general admission last season. So I paid $10 a game there. And at Tech CU, as a season ticket holder, I paid like $12.40 or something. So literally a couple bucks more. But yeah, come on out. The higher price you pay for a ticket, the better seat you're going to get. But it's just get out there. You'll see. You'll have a great time.
Awesome. Any final thoughts, Mark?
I wish I was able to come out to some of those games, because if anything, I was going to fly out to San Jose. It'd probably be more to watch the AHL team right now because of all the prospects there.
Exactly.
But I mean, fans should definitely check it out because it's a brand new arena, and you probably get a little bit more of a vibe being that it's a smaller barn now. So yeah, I wish I could go to a few of those games, but maybe I'll look at a spring trip.
Hey.
Awesome. My final thoughts are, obviously, I appreciate everyone being here with us. And like I said, I will try to get this scheduled a little more frequently than we've done it so far. But again, appreciate everyone being here. And obviously, if you want to follow us along and do all the cool YouTube stuff, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell, leave us a comment. Leave us a comment helps us. All those things help us in the algorithm, which helps when people are looking for Sharks related content. It helps us show up when they are looking. So please do all those things. You can follow me at Ian Blogs Hockey on the Twitter machine. You can follow Mark. Mark, what is your Twitter? I took your name off the screen and I can't see you. That's right. There we go. And at Kevin Lacey 22, at Marky Mark SJS, if I don't know if you can hear him right now. But yeah, other than that, though, we appreciate you guys coming along and hope that you will continue hanging out with us. Obviously, After Dark happens after every San Jose Shark game. You can watch After Dark. And on Sunday night at this time, 7 o'clock, you can watch the Pucknologists. So please do all those things. Thank you and good night.